One of the biggest mistakes I see young writers or beginning writers make is that they don't stay ready so they don't have to get ready. Because there are so many of you guys listening right now who are procrastinating on projects or have 18 different books or things going on, and you can't get one thing done. You can't get one thing done and find an agent or market it or get any momentum in the game. And because you are so scattered, you are blind to the abundance of opportunities available to you as an author in 2025. And today, I'm going to provide you guys with examples of people who were ready during massive opportunities in the recent years and took them, and the writing career will never be the same, and they are now full-time authors. And so I want to start first with a personal story of a missed opportunity. So back in 2013, I was 19 years old and I wanted to be a writer. I was like, dude, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a fiction writer. I was taking classes at UNLV. I was going to workshops all across Vegas. And one night I had this dream, and it was of a dystopian Las Vegas. And I woke up and I was like, this is going to be my novel. And I had never had such a clear vision for a novel before. So over the course of 2013, I wrote 2 drafts and probably dumped over 1,000 hours into this novel. And then at the start of 2014, I had started the 3rd draft, but then I got sidelined. Then I started to doubt myself, and I was like, genre fiction sucks. Like, I'm better than that. I want to be like Cormac McCarthy and David Foster Wallace. I want to write poetry like James Wright and Gary Snyder. So I went off on this totally new direction that was somewhat inspired, but it was basically intellectually inspired and driven by the ego. But what I didn't tell you guys was that during that dream in a dystopian Las Vegas, the only building and area left functioning was the Trump Tower. And back then, I didn't know very much about Donald Trump, other than that he didn't believe that Barack Obama was a US citizen and he was on TV shows and a businessman. I didn't know he was going to run for president. And so I was writing this novel where the head of corruption was Trump Tower. And these oligarchs were ruling over all these poor people who were like living like it was like in Cormac McCarthy's The Road. So I had this burning desire to become a great author, to sell books, and the universe delivered, because if I would have finished that, and I totally could have, if I would have dumped another 3,000 hours in 2014 into that novel, do you guys think that with a polished novel that had been worked on for 5,000 hours about a dystopian reality that was driven by Donald Trump, with all the hysteria about Trump during the first election, do you think I would have gotten that published? Of course that would have gotten published. And on that side quest journey of trying to be like Cormac McCarthy and doing all these different things, I fell away from writing. I got sucked into a terrible relationship. I got sucked into different things, and writing was on the back burner for years. But when I go back to 2013 and I look at myself when I first got that vision, when I first started that novel, I didn't have the skills, the perseverance, and the fortitude and stature to see any project through. That's to be expected of any 19-year-old. But let's go a step deeper. Let's say I did finish it. Let's say I did get that novel published and it sold really well, and suddenly I was a full-time author. I was still not ready to step into that moment, because when you look at people like a David Foster Wallace, he sat for decades waiting for his moment. David Foster Wallace was bred to be a genius. He was genetically very smart. His parents trained him to be a writer. He got a $40,000 advance for The Broom of the System at 21 years old. And that novel is the Wittgensteinian fictional remix of his thesis on logic. And then 2 years later, he got a short story collection published. And then things went radio silent for him for a while because he had to go to rehab and he fell into addiction. But during those years, as he was writing Infinite Jest, he was going to multiple AA meetings a day. He was also going around the country and writing some of his famous nonfiction pieces. He was doing interviews. He was prepping himself for the moment. And so when Infinite Jest blew up and became, a bestseller, he was ready to do the interviews. He was ready to step into that moment and be great. And so now I want to kind of turn the focus back to you. Let's say one of your pieces on Substack or your novel suddenly gets published. Are you ready? Are you consistent enough to follow that through? Because the publishing industry is a machine. If you are gifted an opportunity by the gods, all that means in actuality, objectively, is that you will have a group of people who are going to care about you for a limited time. And if you don't follow up with them and enchant them further, they will forget about you. and then your status as a full-time author will be gone. And this has been a problem for so many young authors that they maybe work on a postmodernist novel when they have a lot of time before they have kids, and they release it and it's successful. I don't know if any of the OGs out there have read Well by Matthew McIntosh, but it was a bestseller, and I would say it was pretty good. Well, it took him another 14 years, and his wife had to work, and they were living, having a very hard financial time to publish his second novel, The Mystery Doc, which sadly I read also, but it didn't, I don't think, sell very well. Because at my university, so at UNLV, they have for the creative writing students a separate library with hundreds of journals that they get every single month and all this other stuff. The Black Mountain Institute over there has so much money. But over in one of the corners of the library, because I would be in there reading stuff all the time, seeing what people were up to in the publishing industry, in some corner cabinet, there were like 6 of these books stacked in a box that had never been opened. And so I tell you this story because no one cared about Matthew McIntosh 14 years later. But it's also very hard to maintain your artistic integrity if it takes you 14 years to release something that's as good as your first thing. And so how do you make people care? How do you do this? And I want to bring someone up now who some of you guys don't like. And his name is Vincenzo Barney. And Vincenzo wrote the Cormac McCarthy Vanity Fair piece that millions of people have read. And I want you guys to think about this. Vincenzo, first and foremost, alongside Luigi Mangione, has made Italian Americans great again, but that's a whole other discussion. Vincenzo is an aesthetic terrorist at the highest degree. But how did Vincenzo, get this massive literary opportunity? How did he get the literary scoop of the century? It wasn't by sitting on his ass. Vincenzo was on Substack years ago. I actually remember reading some of his stuff. And he wrote a 10,000 word review of Cormac McCarthy's The Passenger a couple months after it came out. First and foremost, I think that's the longest review of The Passenger out there. And if you know his style, it is very maximalist. And I'm sure it took him, dozens of hours to write, but probably no one cared. I'm sure it got some likes and it got some support. But Augusta Britt, Cormac McCarthy's ex-girlfriend, mistress, whatever you want to call her, saw that and decided that she wanted to give her story to him. But I want you guys to think about this. Vincenzo is a fiction author. He's a nonfiction author. Now he's a journalist. He's also a kind of writing personality. And he was juggling all of that. He was working on all that up until the point that he got, one could say, famous through that Vanity Fair article. And so now he is not hiding away from that opportunity. He is outspoken. He is funny. He is, getting different publications to publish his stuff. He's going and doing different interviews. And I want you guys to look at him. I want you guys to think, am I this ready? Am I putting content out there? Because so many of you guys right now are dreaming of this novel, or maybe you're still working on this ephemeral novel and hoping it's going to do good, but you're not on X, you're not on Substack, you're not releasing short stories and poems, and you have excuses like, I can't do that all at once. Yes, you can. You can write a short story literally in your head or on your lunch break at work. You could be grinding out things that maybe aren't at the highest degree of your utmost potential and putting those out into the ether and starting to build a base. Because the other thing about, which is a perfect example here of Mr. Barney, is that, okay, he blew up in the Vanity Fair article, but you can go to his Substack and he has a bunch of writing that you can read. So if you were a fan, there is stuff to read. If someone became a fan of you right now, how much stuff is there to read from you that's assembled all in one place and a place where they can maybe pay you? Probably not very much. And so we have to get ready so that we can stay ready. You need to be acting right now like you are Mr. Barney, that you have just blown up or you are about to blow up, that you have this literary scoop, that your big project, your novel is going to be great, and you are assembling all the pieces for that moment. And if you aren't, then you are doubting yourself. And then when that moment comes, it's going to pass you by and you are going to regret it forever. And now that I know this, there have been opportunities that I have taken that have helped me, on this YouTube channel. I made 200 videos and only had got 100 subscribers. But then one day, because I was just putting out daily videos, my opportunity came and here we are now. Scarcity in writing is only a blindness to opportunity. And many of you guys right now, if you don't have anyone reading your work, are blind to the opportunities that are all around you that you could take right now without even having to change who you are fundamentally. And then if you did change who you were fundamentally, then you can make it even a bigger splash. Then you could rip open your shirt and wear the cross and show off your hair like Vincenzo over here. And so, boom, there is the daily word. There is the knowledge. I am Ian from Right Conscious. This is where the literary renaissance is happening. I have nothing to sell you, at least in this video, or nothing to promote except focusing on yourself. Get ready, be ready, so that we can stay ready. I will talk to you guys later.